Mayor, the meeting is not being recorded.
Thank you, City Clerk. The meeting will now reconvene at 6:04 p.m. City Attorney, can you please provide the closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council is now back in open session, having met in closed session to discuss the item listed on the agenda. Staff provided a report, but there was no reportable action taken. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. If there's no objection by the City Council, we'll go ahead and adjourn the closed session City Council meeting at 6:04 p.m. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 24, 2023, 6 p.m. regular joint meeting of the Bell Garden City Council and successor agency to the Community Development Commission. The meeting will now come to order at 6:05 p.m. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any member should have a conflict of interest, please announce any item you're recusing from due to a conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Reynaldo Lea, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Girl Scout Troop 2543.
Madam Mayor, all of our councilmen and councilwomen, our city manager, our chief, and all the fine employees of the city. It's a blessing to be here, and it's also a blessing to have the honor to invoke the name of Jesus upon this meeting. Let us remember as we pray, we come into the presence of God. So I ask you that you please bow your heads and let us pray. Father, we want to thank you for all the great blessings that you've given us as a country, as a state, and as our city. I thank you for each one of our leaders, our mayor, and all the staff, the councilmen and councilwomen, and everybody that makes the city work. And Father, as we come before you, we want to recognize you. You are the Lord. And the Bible says that blessed is the nation that you are the Lord of that nation. So Father, we put in your hands this meeting. May you be the guiding force, and you meet with each one of them, that everyone that speaks and takes part in this meeting would all be in the same accord. Father, just your presence be here. We ask this in the name of Jesus, and can we say amen? Thank you.
Please stand.
Place the flag.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may now be seated.
City Clerk, can you please call roll of the members of the City Council and successor agency?
Yes, thank you. Members of the City Council and successor agency, Barcena. Councilmember Chavez will be excused unless there are any objections from the council or successor agency. Councilwoman Pulido.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez.
Present.
And Mayor Chair Cortez.
Present. We will now move on to the presentations. City Manager, can you please introduce the presentations?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. The first presentation we have is by Athens Services. We have Amanda Mejia here to give the presentation to report on the activities that Athens has, to report on the services that Athens has provided to City Bell Gardens over the last year. Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and residents of Bell Gardens. Today, I will be presenting, as mentioned, on a look back on our 2022 year and a look forward for 2023. It's already April, gonna end. April's already gonna end. So my name is Amanda Mejia. I am your Government Affairs Director. Do you mind switching the slide, please? Switch for you. Thank you. So I'll begin. We have a table of contents here. So I'll speak a little bit about Athens Services, the services that we provide to the City of Bell Gardens, our team, a little update on SB 1383, year in review for 2023 and coming up, and then how to contact us. So as I mentioned, I am your Director of Government Affairs alongside my teammate here, Rudy, who many of you may know. He is the route supervisor for the city of Bell Gardens. And a little bit about our services. So Athens is a local family-owned waste collection and recycling company, providing services to the residents and to your commercial customers also selected, those who have selected to receive services from Athens Services. We have been around for 60 years and we are involved in, with the community in partnership with community organizations, with the schools and other community leaders. So the services that we provide, as you all know, is recycling, special waste, C&D recovery, street sweeping, porter services, solid waste collection, and I will end with our most latest, which is organic services. So just a little update on SB 1383. For those of you who are not familiar, SB 1383 is the mandatory organic recycling services. This was put into place. The program was put into place in September of 2022. And so we have already been doing a lot of outreach, mailers, emails, phone calls, and finding other opportunities to be able to connect with residents, really trying to find opportunities through events that are hosted by the city, in addition to partners, as I mentioned before, like nonprofits that are able to give us access to be able to speak with our residents. So many of you guys may or may have not seen yet, but we do have our team. It's the lid flipping team, and so they'll be out there in Jeeps. The driver's side will be on the right-hand side, similar to that of the mail service. And so those folks will be flipping lids, exactly that, to see what material is being placed in each of the individual bins or barrels. Our goal is to eventually have all residents place the proper material into those barrels, so properly sorting, so that we can have 100% diversion rate here in the city of Bell Gardens. And in doing so, some of our lid flippers have been out already to be able to see what does the city look like in terms of education. Where do we need to focus on? What are some of the things that we need to communicate to the residents? They will be utilizing these tags that you see here posted, and I can share another one with the city that they can also post online. These tags are really right now used for educational purposes. So if we do see contamination in a barrel, we want to inform the resident what they might be contaminating that specific barrel with. And so that is what our forms are being used for at this moment. Please be aware, January 2023 is when there will be the start of, I don't want to call it enforcement, but really engagement to then lead to enforcement at some point. Again, we really want to do our best to educate customers prior to that point. Our goal is to make sure that folks are properly sorting. So just the 3 steps here: driver sits on the right-hand side of the vehicle, as I mentioned, they flip the lid of the container and then they check for contamination. And lastly, they will report back to the customer. So year in review, 2022, I think it was really exciting. You all are, you all started your program, as I mentioned, for organic services, which is really important to the state. And, it was a smooth transition. I believe as customers begin to learn, it will be a change in behavior, but it's something that I think we all will get to understand so that we can get there. So environmental impact, the city diverted 7,686 tons of solid waste. We collected 5.6 tons of Christmas trees, distributed 20 tons of compost, and curbside cleanup. Recently, we had 126.09 tons collected. Now, just note with SB 1383, the city has added mulch to the distribution. So in addition to compost, we will start giving out mulch, and you'll see that in our next slide with events. Some of the social impact and partnerships that Athens has in the city of Bell Gardens includes a small business community, youth programming, sports programming, and community events that we are contributing to. And coming up, so you have your annual curbside cleanup, which I brought some flyers in English and Spanish to leave behind. Those flyers were also mailed out to the residents to inform them on May 20th. We will be having our curbside collection event. And on June 17th, you are to expect the compost and again, the mulch giveaway. So we have added the mulch component, which I know many residents will be super excited about. And that is it for my presentation. I just want to say thank you to the mayor, to the council, and to your staff, and really to the community for allowing Athens to be a partner where we can be to the city. And so we appreciate all of your support, and we look forward to continuing on with 2023. And if there's anything that we can do to support the city, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for your time. City Manager, our next presentation.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a recognition of Professional Municipal Clerks Week, which is next week. And the purpose of this week is to celebrate the importance of the clerk's office in municipal government. I think all of us recognize the tremendous work that our clerk's office does. Daisy, Sonia, Vanessa, and her staff. So with that, I'll turn over to you, Mayor Cortez, and we have our city clerk here to speak as well. Thanks.
Yes, it is my pleasure to present this proclamation in honor of Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Whereas the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored. Si podemos guardar silencio, por favor, if we can keep the voices down. The Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And the Office of the Clerk is the oldest among the public servants. And they provide the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And they have pledged to ever be mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And they serve as the information center and functions of local government and community. And whereas they strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, or international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Professional Municipal Work, and whereas our staff works so hard, and I am so appreciative of everything that you ladies do in that office. You keep us functioning, you keep these meetings going, and we don't recognize you enough. You're often overlooked. So I am very happy that we brought this forward today and that we have the opportunity to recognize you. And I mean that with my whole heart, because you ladies do a lot for us. And Daisy, you just, well, it's been some time now that you integrated yourself to our team, but we're so grateful to have you here in the city of Bell Gardens. And yes, we're just very happy and grateful. But if my colleagues want to say any other comments before I present this.
Yes, I just want to go ahead and thank you for what you do. Sometimes the general audience doesn't know what a city clerk does. So the way that I like to illustrate it is imagine you're watching The Wizard of Oz. It's a person behind the curtains at the council meetings that's basically planning everything and making sure things work, pulling all the right strings and making sure the mechanism is in place. So that's all thanks to you and the collaboration of the entire city employees. So I really appreciate what you do. I hope that you will continue to work with us for many, many years. And that's all. Keep doing a great job. Thank you so much.
I just want to echo what my colleague said. I know that, we wouldn't be able to function without you and your team. So thank you so much for everything that you do, and your hard work and dedication to our community does not go unnoticed. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes. So now let it be resolved that I, Alejandra Cortez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, along with the City Council, do hereby proclaim and recognize the week of April 30th through May 6th as Professional Municipal Clerks Week in the City of Bell Gardens. And we encourage all citizens to extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication in our community. It is proclaimed this 24th day of April 2023. A big round of applause for our City Clerk's office, please. And then I do want to invite both of you or the rest of your team as well to take a picture with us.
Thank you. I do also want to take a quick moment just to thank everyone for taking the time to acknowledge us. Apparently, it's the first one in Bell Gardens, as I've been noted. I was gonna just kind of tell everyone what the city clerk's office does, but you pretty much covered it all. So thank you so much for doing that. I think you're right. A lot of people don't really know what the city clerk's office does until they need them. So thank you so much for bringing this to the council and appreciating us at this time.
Yes.
I'll do this way. Okay, ready? 1, 2, smile. I didn't do close up.
Oh, thank you.
City Manager, what's our next presentation?
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a proclamation recognizing May 1st as Global Love Day. Global Love Day is dedicated to spreading of love and peace to all humanity. I'll turn it over back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to read this proclamation. I'm going to go ahead and show it in the screen for those that are watching from home. And this is a proclamation in honor of Global Love Day. Something very simple, but it's a universal language that we all should be able to speak fluently. So the Love Foundation is a nonprofit organization that has announced Global Love Day to facilitate in establishing love and peace in our planet. And Global Love Day will establish a worldwide focus towards unconditionally loving each other as we love ourselves. And we are one humanity on this planet, and all life is interconnected and interdependent. And we all share the universal bond of love. Love begins with self-acceptance and forgiveness. With respect and compassion, we embrace diversity. Together, we make a difference through love. The Love Foundation invites mankind to declare May 1st, 2023 as Global Love Day, a day of forgiveness and unconditional love. Global Love Day will act as a model for all of us to follow each and every day. Now, therefore, Alejandra Cortez, the mayor of the city of Bell Gardens, hereby dedicates and proclaims May 1st, 2023 as Global Love Day in Bell Gardens and invites all citizens to observe this day, which honors the public cause for global love, world peace, and universal joy. Proclaimed this 24th day of April, 2023. And it's signed by our mayor. Thank you.
City Manager, the next presentation.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a proclamation recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental Health Awareness Month, the intent is to bring awareness to mental health conditions and increase access to healthcare for those with mental health conditions. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me the honor to read this proclamation in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health awareness is essential to everyone overall's health and well-being, and whereas mental health involves our emotional, psychological, social well-being. Therefore, it is crucial for the community to acquire knowledge that mental health affects the way we think, we feel, and we act. Whereas each business, school, government, agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen has a responsibility to promote mental health, and well-being for all. Now therefore, it be resolved that Alejandra Cortez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, with the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month in the City of Bell Gardens and encourage all citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increase awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps of the citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for the appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health illnesses. Proclaim this 24th day of April 2023. Mental health awareness.
And our last presentation.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next one is a proclamation recognizing Older Americans Month. Basically encourages and recognizes the contributions that older adults make to all of our communities. Thank you, Mayor.
What a perfect combination of proclamations for this month. We have Global Love Day, Mental Health Awareness Day, and Older Americans Month Day. I know that we're all aware that our elders usually lack the feeling of love, especially and unfortunately sometimes from their loved ones because of, everyday activities and what have you. And that leads to mental health needs. So this combination makes a lot of sense. So well thought out, Mayor. Having that said, the City of Bell Gardens includes a growing number of older Americans who contribute their strength, wisdom, and experience, helping to make our community stronger and more informed. The City of Bell Gardens recognizes the need to create a community that provides services and supports the need of older Americans to thrive and live independently for as long as possible. The City of Bell Gardens continues to work to build an even better community for its older residents by planning programs that encourage independence, ensuring activities are responsive to individual needs and preferences, and increasing access to services that support aging in place. Now therefore be resolved that I, Alejandra Cortez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, and the City Council do hereby proclaim May 2023 to be the Older Americans Month in the City of Bell Gardens, and we urge you all residents of Bell Gardens to recognize the contributions of our older citizens, help to create an inclusive society, and join efforts to support older American choices about how they age in their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for assisting me in reading those very important proclamations. The last presentation, the recognition of the residents' attainment of U.S. citizenship, will be rescheduled to the next council meeting, City Manager.
Yes, Mayor.
With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to public participation of non-agenda items.
Thank you, Mayor. For the members of the public, we'll have an opportunity now to speak on items not listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. Excuse me, please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker are limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise indicated by the chair. And callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will first hear from speakers that are in person, and we did not receive any written comments before 5 p.m. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Carmina.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Honorable City Council members. My name is Carmina Lopez and I represent the LA County Regional Parks and Open Space District, also known as RPOSD. We are responsible for administering administering Measure A, which was approved by 75% of LA County voters in November of 2016. It generates approximately $109 million per year through an annual parcel tax of 1.7 cents per square feet of improved property for the acquisition and improvements of parks. I am here this evening to introduce to you our Technical Assistance Program, also known as TAP. TAP provides technical assistance primarily through grant funding to cities within LA County that have been identified as high need or very high need in regards to parkland. The determination as to the level of park need is based on the findings of the Park Needs Assessment of 2016. In July 2022, based on your city status as very high need, we allocated Bell Gardens $285,000 in TAP funding to be used for technical assistance services. This TAP funding can be used in a variety of ways, all aimed at increasing your city's overall park acreage. TAP pays for professional services such as conducting a land inventory, community outreach, environmental tests or surveys, real estate negotiations, planning, and design. In meeting with other TAP eligible cities, there has been a wide range of project ideas discussed for new parkland for acquisition projects. Ideas include pocket parks, linear parks, or passive parks. For other types of open space ideas include dog and skate parks, community and botanical gardens, and green alleyways. Keep in mind, projects are not limited to acquisition. Cities can also enter into a long-term lease agreement with the utility company, the railroad, or Caltrans to develop their unused land into park land or open spaces. Your city has already executed a master agreement with RPOSD to access your TAP funds. And we have been in communication with your city staff regarding the TAP program. Please know that TAP is here to assist you in getting your park project started. I should note that there is a deadline of December 31st, 2024 to encumber your TAP funds. If you have any questions, I left our contact information, and we look forward to the partnership. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lee Squire?
Lee Squire, Vietnam Veterans of Downey, Death Before Dishonor. Mayor and City Council, we the people of Bell Gardens and veterans of Bell Gardens. First, veterans of Bell Gardens want to thank the artist for the picture of that police officer with the children that was presented at your last council meeting. As you know, veterans, military reserves, and the National Guard serve in local policing across America, and we support our local policing. Second, death before dishonor. So there's no misunderstanding. This phrase is one of honor and implies, may I die before I dishonor my military and veteran family. It is an oath to be the voice of brothers and sisters who never return from conflict. Given attacks on freedom of speech and religion of the United States Constitution, I am asking veterans to speak up for attacks on freedoms in the United States Constitution. I and we do not tolerate threats or violence when exercising any of the freedoms in the U.S. Constitution. Finally, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, slams Central Basin Municipal Water District for violating the free speech when a citizen raised criminal indictment against General Manager Alex Rojas. A copy of that letter I just sent this evening to the city clerk. God bless America. God bless Israel. God bless military and the veterans, and God bless local policing and their families across America. Thank you.
Bruce Acro?
Okay, Central Basin Water District was brought up. Interesting. Another, I don't know about the letter, but two more names have surfaced in this criminal organization of the people that are running it. Juan Martinez apparently is an activist of some kind, was escorted out the other day by two armed officers. And Art Chacon, I don't know if anybody knows those two people or not, but There are two names now that have become to the forefront. I mean, I've been trying to connect a lot of these dots and it's impossible because my concern is we have a $10 standby charge on our property tax bill that is illegal. But it brings in $5 million a year to people at the Central Basin Municipal Water District. It's illegal and we need to be reimbursed for it. And these people need to go to jail that are participating in this type of embezzlement and bribery and amongst other things. Global Love Day. Unconditional love. Love is love. You all see the shirt and the emblem on there. Does that mean a 40-year-old can love an 8-year-old? Of course not. Love is not a virtue in itself. You can love the wrong things or you can love bad things. So whoever's writing your talking points up there, your progressive talking points of lunacy, you need to rethink them because your policy of diversity, inclusivity, and equity, if you put those 3 letters together, that is an acronym called DIE. It will die. It will kill itself. It is the old George Hegel philosopher from Germany's zeitgeist he wanted to put into the culture. But you have to make decisions and love the correct things. So I want to also segue over to an issue that has come up recently. And this is where the LGBTQ tranny terrorists that are out there attacking women, you cannot say that you support women any longer if you're going to approve a man who says he's a woman and goes over and competes against girls and beats the hell out of them in the sporting contest. That is hypocrisy. And that is a mental illness that needs to be recognized. And you need to change your thinking on that. Because otherwise, as a woman, your opinion doesn't matter if you're going to allow the atrocities of that. Thank you.
City Clerk, I believe we have one online.
Yes, we do. Zoom ID Carmen Verdugo, if you would please. I'm sorry, I don't have access to unmute. I don't think I was made co-host. If you would please select the microphone icon or the unmute feature on your Zoom to unmute yourself.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, we can hear you now.
Hi, thank you. My name is Carmen and I'm calling to request that Siaka Animal Shelter, the shelter that services Bell Gardens, be added to the agenda, please. I am also calling because I would like to backyard breeders to be held accountable as well because they contribute to the problem of all these the population, overpopulation of dogs and dogs being euthanized at the shelters. It's not just the shelters, fault and they get a lot of the blame for it, but it's also these breeders that they breed dogs, they use their dog as a cash cow and they just breed it and breed it and breed it. And then they just toss it. And when I was driving down Adamson Avenue, I noticed this house had a sign on its gate, and it's a pretty big sign. It says baby huskies 2 months for sale, call, and then it has the phone number. I also have the address. And this is really sad because this week there's about 7 huskies at Siaka alone that are going to be euthanized if they're not rescued. And here you have someone just breeding dogs in their yard, which I'm pretty sure is not licensed because, 2 months is about 8 or 9 weeks. And you're not supposed to be selling dogs until they're at least 12 weeks because the vaccinations right now, they're too young to be vaccinated. So I would like follow up on that to see if, somebody does check in on this person and the dogs. And yeah, I tried calling Siaka, but they're closed today. So the main issue with Siaka is that they're only open 8 hours a week. We are a working class community. We're to only be open 8 hours a week and 2 hours a day from 1 to 3. I mean, that's not enough for most people to go and see dogs. And like for example, today I didn't go to work because I work for a school, but they're closed today. And then yesterday they were closed as well. And then tomorrow they don't have visiting hours either. So I'd have to wait till Wednesday, from Wednesday to Saturday. And today the Downey Animal Shelter, they're open 7 days a week and they're open on Wednesdays all the way till 7 p.m. And they service, I believe, Bell and Cudahy. And I don't think that's fair, like for members of our community to not have that same access to a shelter. That's it. Have a nice night.
Thank you. And that was the last caller.
Thank you, City Clerk. If there's no objection by the members of the City Council, I will go ahead and close public participation for non-agenda items. And we're not going to move on to public participation for agenda items. City Clerk, can you please announce the instructions?
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor Joint Agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments. Each speaker are limited to 3 minutes unless directed otherwise by the chair. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. And when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individual joining us through Zoom may make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We'll begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber.
We're going to start with Eleazar Ortiz.
Buenas noches a todos, mi nombre es Eleazar Ortiz. Vengo representando al Pescador Restaurant y solamente quería compartirles ciertas preocupaciones que yo tengo en respecto a lo de los vendedores ambulantes. No me preocupa, quiero compartirles, no me preocupa el número de personas que yo estoy mirando afuera ahorita, en este momento. Lo que me preocupa en realidad es lo que viene adelante, si no se toman medidas adecuadas. Lo que yo veo es la multiplicación de estos negocios, de los puestos ambulantes, descontroladamente. Eso es lo que me preocupa. Quiero también compartirles una situación que no es desconocida para nadie. Los altos costos del labor, los altos costos de la comida, la inflación que no la habíamos tenido por muchos años. Y esto dificulta la operación ya de por sí de todos los negocios, no nada más del mío, de todos los negocios. Quisiera pedirles, tengo, ya lo saben ustedes, 40 años operando aquí y nunca he pedido nada. Pero en esta ocasión sí me gustaría pedirles que se piense muy bien las decisiones que se van a tomar, porque muchas familias pueden ser impactadas por esto. En el negocio mío, que es su casa de ustedes, tenemos 45 familias que dependen de que ese negocio siga funcionando. Y así no es el caso, no es el único. Hay otros negocios que inclusive tienen situaciones más dificultosas que las de nosotros. Solo quisiera hablar por la gente de Bell Gardens, que es mucha que está trabajando con nosotros, por nuestra comunidad y por nuestros negocios locales. Muchísimas gracias.
Everyone. The next speaker is Jose.
Hello, everyone. I'm gonna talk in Spanish because you have Mr. Manuel down there, the owner of the Hamburger place over there in Florence and Area. I live in 6467 Florence Avenue, back house. Okay. Hace 40 días se mudaron un grupo de personas. Yo vivo en la parte de atrás. La siguiente casa hay un patio que el dueño acomodó. Yo tengo viviendo 23 años en la ciudad de Belgarde. Y yo nunca había visto algo parecido. Como dijo la persona, el señor del pescador, que los vendedores ambulantes afectan. En mi caso, esas personas en ese patio, de la casa a la mía y el patio, se ha puesto una fábrica de tamales. Yo hice reporte hace 4 semanas, un departamento acá, y lo único que yo vi es una nota amarilla diciendo que tiene que recoger esto en el patio al dueño. Yo siempre, por costumbre, recojo la correspondencia yo vivo con 2 personas más. Y no es tanto eso, la fábrica de tamales, sino el bullicio, la algarabía, la risa, la música, las cosas que suenan mientras están haciendo sus tamales, tiran peroles, tiran eso, hacen bulla, y ahí vivimos 3 comunidades de casa. Yo no puedo dormir, yo tengo una operación reciente, aparte del dolor, tengo que soportarlos a ellos. He hablado constantemente las últimas 3 semanas y no escuchan. Es algo que realmente a mí me tiene sin dormir. Aparte del ruido, es insaludable lo que están haciendo porque esa agua con que hacen ese producto no se puede tomar. Y eso y muchas cosas más. Y a nombre del señor Manuel le afecta la cuadra donde él trabaja o su dueño de negocio, porque ahí venden los tamales que hacen donde yo vivo. Gracias.
Director Gus, can we please get his contact information and follow up on that?
Yes.
And lastly, we have Bruce Crow.
Okay, number 10, sidewalk vending enforcement update. Well, shouldn't we have a presentation and an update so we can comment on it? Maybe first things first, sidewalk vendors should not be allowed on your streets, period. You should be loyal to your brick and mortar buildings who are willing to sacrifice and lay down roots and do the right thing and make a community a much nicer place. But most of you don't care about the rules and doing the right thing because you're willing to let our southern border be just totally obliterated by Joe Biden. What do you think happens when you allow all these people to just come in here? Well, it drives wages down. There are not enough jobs for these people. But you don't care. You don't care at all. You don't care about the brick and mortar buildings or the neighbor that has to put up with this garbage. You say it's okay because of Love Day or something like that. You know, these people are mean. No, they're not mean. They want things done in an orderly fashion. And we have to have order. We can't have just everybody do whatever they want. Sidewalk vending, the permits are put out by the county, not by the city. It was interesting to find out over in Downey of how many permits were issued by the county over these last few years. You know how many there were? One permit. Now they have two types of permits. One where you have open food where they cut it and then try to serve it, or they have closed packages. And it was only a closed package permit, just one. So all these other folks are here illegally selling stuff on the sidewalk. Who knows what they're selling? Does it matter? I don't know. Progress report on rent stabilization and tenant eviction protections. Well, your policies and your thinking and your big hearts have got you in a rent stabilization situation. You have stabilized that situation. You have 80 to 85% renters in this town. That is not a format for success. You need to get that below 50% and more home ownership. Now you can look at yourself in the mirror and ask, what have I done to advocate for more home ownership? And I think you'll find the answer right there. You've done nothing. And you're going to be the one that protects the poor victims that you are allowing to come in here and spread this poverty. Thank you very much.
City Clerk, do we have any additional comments?
No, and we didn't receive any written comments before the meeting started. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. If there's objection by the members, I will go ahead and close public participation. We're going to move on to the city manager report.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. Just want to acknowledge and thank the staff, residents, and the council for working, attending, and supporting the many public events that we've had just since the last council meeting. I just want to mention Saturday, April 15th, we had spring cleanups at Hannon and Asmus Parks. We had another financial literacy workshop on buying cars that was held for residents at Veterans Park. We had a successful yard sale weekend on the 15th and the 16th. The PD hosted a coffee with a cop on last Wednesday at Starbucks on Eastern. This Saturday was a busy Saturday for a lot of staff, residents, and council members, stakeholders. It was a community tree planting event at Darwell and Gallant Park and an Earth Day event at Veterans Park. The last thing I just want to mention going forward, we still have our farmers market going on Friday, 11 to 3. This is perfect farmers market weather and time now through the fall. I think is really the sweet spot for the farmers market. So please attend or stop by if you haven't. And the last thing I'll mention is on Saturday, May 6th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at Veterans Park, there's a low-cost pet vaccine clinic, and you can find information on our calendar for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. We're going to go ahead and move on to consent calendar. Does any member of the council, successor agency wish to pull any item for separate discussion? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and move to approve the consent calendar. May I have a second?
I second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. City Clerk, can we please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barsana
Yes.
and Councilmember Chavez is excused. Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes, motion carries. Consent calendar is approved. City Manager discussion item number 8.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a presentation by our city engineer. It's on the progress and the next steps on the evaluation of the city's water system, water quality. Before Doug Benosh takes it, just want to remind the council about 2 years ago, there was a decision made to purchase surface water and to stop producing and serving water from the one existing well for the city's water system while this analysis was performed in an effort to determine if there were what the means would be to clean this water up so that would be a level of contamination lower than what it currently is. And with that, I will turn over to our city engineer to provide the update on all the work that's done since that time. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Doug.
No, tonight I'm here to give you an update on our water quality improvement engineering study and recommendations to move forward. Just a little more background on September 2020, the State Water Resources Control Board issued notification limits for a compound called PFAS and PFOA. It is what they call a forever chemical, does not dissolve, but it winds up coming from firefighting foams, stain resistant products, nonstick coatings, and a wide variety of other consumer goods. It's been around since the 1940s. With results that the state implemented notification limits of these compounds in the water system. And when we reached a notification limit level and exceeded that notification level, we had to notify the council of those findings. And then at the time, the council determined to turn the well off, thereby implementing the use of Metropolitan Water District water. Following the turnoff, council initiated the city's engineering firm to initiate a study for the process to evaluate the options to move forward. January 2020 or 2022, that's a typo. I'm sorry about that. We initiated a video well inspection, but the video camera got stuck in the well, so that delayed the process. We had to pull the entire well and pump out and redo the whole thing with a temporary pump to get the well to flow. And based on doing the well profiling with the water flows from the well, we determined that PFAS is in all levels of the water column throughout the well. So that was the findings of the study that we really came to the conclusion of. So now we turn to looking, how do we evaluate the water system in order to get either the well turned back on, treatment options, and other facilities to go forward. So our report evaluated several items. We need to determine what is the best technology that's out there today to treat PFAS and PFOA compounds. This is in well number 1. The PFAS and PFOA is a family of compounds. There's like 27 other PFAS related compounds that are probably going to come down the line for treatment requirements. We needed to look at the blending of well number 1 water with MWD water to reduce the concentration of PFAS in the water supply. We looked at using MWD water during the design construction of a PFAS treatment system. We looked at using the well number 1 water without the PFAS treatment system during the construction of it. That means turning the well back on and using that water cost versus MWD water costs. We evaluated the use of MWD water before and after construction of the reservoir and booster station without PFAS treatment. And then we looked at the cost of all the PFAS treatment and water blending systems. We also included annual costs and maintenance operations for each PFAS treatment system. We also looked at the inactive well 3F on Gage Avenue, see if there was a possibility to turn that well on and get clean water. And then we looked at then we looked at adjacent agencies to see if they want to acquire our water system. We looked at the well number 1 site constraints and areas for future expansion. And then lastly, but not least, to address all the costs and how it impacts the ratepayers, we looked at the water rate adjustments necessary to cover the anticipated costs of each option. This led us to the options to consider. Number one option to consider is using ion treatment or ion exchange treatment to get the PFAS out of the water to a level below 80% below the state's requirements currently. The estimated cost to construct the treatment facility is $6.5 million with an annual cost of 1.3 million and a water cost of 1,400 acre feet per foot. And then we apply that to the state water rates in a fashion which I'll explain a little later. And we pay that all off in 14 years. Option number two was using granulated active carbon treatment systems for the option. A little more expensive at $8.6 million. Same M&O cost, and the water cost a little more expensive, and we're not recommending this because there's a payoff in 15 years. Option number three, use well number one water without PFAS treatment while we build without PFAS treatment, just basically turning the well back on and wait till the federal government and the state government to regulate what we have to do for PFAS. That is the cheapest, most cost effective, but it's not recommended, with a payoff in 9 years. Number four was use of MWD water without PFAS treatment option. That's maintaining the course with MWD water. And on the long run, this is not recommended because that only gives us one source of water for the system. And there are traces of PFAS in MWD water that might have to be treated in the future. But the other aspect of it is this becomes expensive, and there's never a payoff of any debt in the future. Blending of well number one water with MWD water. We would have to construct a transmission line from Randolph and Garfield all the way down the reservoir site as part of the construction options, and then build the reservoir and the booster station in order to do this. This is not cost effective. Even after 15 years, we're still in a deficit with the water fund of $8 million. Number six has contacted the surrounding agencies, including Golden State, if they would want to buy the company, the water company. They are not interested because everybody else is dealing with PFAS at the moment. So it's really not a sellable item. And number seven, the well three option. We finally found the records for the well, and we have evidence that there's poor water quality out of that well, and it's a shallow well. So it's not feasible to bring it on into production because of other contaminants in the water. Though we do need to recommend to add it to the annual water CIP to destroy the well properly for $158,000, but we can do that through the current CIP program with the rate study. So what we determined in our study was that ion exchange is the preferred alternative. The time frame to complete this is 6 months of design, 12 to 18 months for construction, and three months of post-construction sampling with the State Water Resources Control Board for permitting purposes. In the process, we will also work with the State Water Control Board to get our project up and approved. If the city were to begin the design process in July of 2023, it's estimated that well number one and the treatment plant would be operational in December of 2026. These things take time. So when we looked at the rate studies, currently what we have on board, we have a rate study through fiscal year 25-26, where there's a 20% increase in consumption already built into the rate studies that is currently on board. In the next 5 years, in 26-27, through the next 5 years, we're recommending a 10% increase in consumption and 15% meter rate every year in the next 5 years following the first 5 years. And in 15 years time frame, if you follow that methodology, we'd be paying off the construction costs and the debt service of the system and be making positive cash flow. And our recommendations tonight for you to consider: to receive and file this report, which I brought a copy right here. Authorize staff to issue a request for services to infrastructure engineers to complete the design of the ion exchange treatment plans. And upon State Water Board approval, the city's request a grant amendment or city appropriating necessary funding. Authorize the staff to issue an RFS to infrastructure engineers to initiate the Prop 218 rate study for the new rates adjustments in 24-25 accordingly. And just to let you know, our design premise is basically this. We have not secured any grant funding for any of the construction items, whether it's the reservoir, the booster station, or even PFAS treatment. Our analysis basically is solely based upon the fact of having the water system pay for the treatment facility and get the water well turned back on, that because that is the most economical solution for providing water to the residents of the system. So if we are successfully to get grant construction for the construction of the PFAS treatment, the booster station and the reservoir, the rate adjustments we are not imposing the construction costs into the rate study. So that would be a whole nother analysis, but we can't do that on a what if. So tonight's presentation is based on constructing the PFAS treatment facility and get that action motion initiated. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
Mayor, if I can just add commentary, so this is a long-term project, as Doug described, even the items. So the action items there today are early steps in a long-term process. So the second step, that's the RSF for the Prop 218 study. That's a significant process that goes through public hearings, public information is put out there, responses come back from the public. So this will come back to the council at a future date. The RFS for the design work would start now. That's the actual design of the system, not the actual funding or construction of the system. Right. So there's still time for us to seek funding for the actual construction. Yep. And these items will be naturally coming back to the council as the projects move on.
Yeah, we are actively working with the state as we speak to try to secure construction funding.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments? No. I'll go ahead and move to follow staff's recommendation of or recommendations 1, 2, and 3. City Attorney, do I need to read them or does it suffice?
That's sufficient.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Second by Councilmember Barsina. City Clerk, can we please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the Council on Successor Agency, Barsina,
Yes.
and Councilmember Chavez is excused. Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes. Motion carries. City Manager, discussion item number 9.
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a parking policies and programs update and informational item that's been prepared by our Public Works Department. And just as some background, obviously the city of Bell Gardens is a densely populated city, about 16 to 17,000 people per acre. There are parking issues. There are a lot of vehicles. There's steps that the city has taken in the past. I can speak specifically to some over the last 3 to 4 years, and there are programs that we're continuing to work on. So with that, I will turn it over to Veronica to give the presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. So today before you is just a presentation, a brief overview of the parking policies and programs that have been implemented. And so back in September of 2019, City Council approved an ordinance that would allow us to issue parking permits for people that would want to block their private driveways. And some key points to that are that the permits are address and location specific, and they're transferred between vehicles that are all registered to the same address. The permit is only for single family homes, so that driveway should only lead to a single family home. And they are issued by the department on a calendar basis and then renewed annually. So for the city, that means freeing up about 1,000 parking spaces in the city. In September of 2020, T marking policy and petition was adopted. And what T markings do, it encourages or it delineates the parking spaces and encourages a more orderly parking. But they do tend, or excuse me, they, next one. There we go. Okay. But what does tend to happen is with T marking spaces, it reduces the net amount of parking spaces because we do follow the MUTCD, which dictates that each parking space shall be 18 feet long. So if we have a curb that's 36 feet in length, then that can accommodate 2 parkings, but be that a couple feet shorter, then that would only accommodate 1 parking space, would only be delineated there. Another program that was implemented was the residential permit parking district. And that was in June of 2021, where this ordinance was passed to establish residential parking permit district program. And what the program does is it allows for blocks and 3/4 of the proposed district would have to be single family dwellings. And so what that means is that multifamily properties that are 5 units or more, which means apartment complexes, would be excluded from the parking district and would have to provide on-site parking. And so other key points to that is that the district is whole blocks, so it begins at the beginning of a street block through the following intersection. And the process for establishing the district is 2 parts, so to speak, because first it requires the support of 70% of those that live in the district. And I think I've missed something, but it also requires that 25% of the people that are parking within the district are not people that live in the district. So that's a key point to note. And once it's submitted, then it would be reviewed. Once that petition comes in, it would be reviewed by the traffic engineer, and it would require the police department's input, and then ultimately city council to approve by resolution to establish that district. And then the second component to that would be that once the district is established. Oh, here it is. Okay, I think we've went over that, but it's, okay, so once the district is established, then 1 permit would be issued per household and 1 temporary one. So if a temporary one is needed for hardship cases where people might require 2 permits per household, then that can be considered. And once 50% of the permits have been issued by the department is when signage and enforcement can begin by the police department. The other efforts that have been made is there was an ordinance adopted to allow the city to reduce the amount of red curb at a fire hydrant. And that is to be considered on a case-by-case basis, only where reducing it would allow for an additional street parking. And currently, staff is performing a colored curb audit. And so we'll be revisiting yellow, white, and blue curbs. So if there is no longer a need for any of those, we can go ahead and remove them and make them available for future on-street parking or more on-street parking. And so that's a brief overview of the programs we have in place. And with that, we ask that you receive and file this report. Thank you. And I can answer any questions.
Mayor Cortez, if I could add a couple of comments. So what you see over the last 3 to 4 years is not one size fits all solutions. It's a number of solutions, kind of an a la carte approach where if parking in front of your driveway fits for your property or in your community, you can get a permit for that. If T markings, for some reason, the characteristics of a T marking would make sense, you can apply for that. Parking districts were mentioned. If you just Google search Bell Gardens parking, it takes you to our webpage where those forms are located. So it's pretty easy to find. But some of the stats that weren't there, but I just want to mention is the city has looked specifically at blue curbs, yellow curbs, red curbs, green curbs over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think the last time we added up how many that we've added or removed. I think we had added a net of approximately 90 parking spaces throughout the city by making changes, either adding or subtracting. In a lot of cases, it was subtracting, I think, green and or yellow curbs that were unnecessary. So there's been a definite net increase, but all these other options have been made available. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. I asked this item to be placed on the agenda. We've received several concerns, or I have, from different residents. One resident telling me that, you know, neighbor X has 5-6 cars that they sell, but neighbor X is also harassing other members when they park in their designated position. So they're afraid to use or avail themselves of the current procedures that we have because they fear retaliation. Some residents are interested in T markings, others are interested in parking permits. I'm wondering, because as of now, I'm assuming no one has used these processes, at least for the.
I think, Veronica, there's been some applications, but go ahead and describe the details.
So as far as the driveway permit parkings, those have been issued. There's 3 of them currently issued, and the others, there's been many inquiries, and we do take the time to go over it with them. And so we hand them the packet or we refer them to the website, but no one's moved forward in submitting a petition.
Okay, so I'm wondering if maybe we can have a workshop, community workshop, where we have more detailed information about these processes, give it one last sweep or a couple sweeps for them to know that they can avail themselves of this help. And if not, I mean, the other thing I could think of is placing on the ballot for residents to decide whether they want parking permits, but that's a little further out. So maybe in the time being, we can go ahead and do something to receive more of their input as to whether we have to revisit this. Last time we did was in 2020. And as of now, I don't think it's been too effective, but you know, a lot has happened since then as well. So maybe a workshop, some way to receive their comments, a public forum, from here until we decide maybe, and also start looking at the cost of what it would be to place it on the ballot, just to see if our community would be interested in just doing parking permits altogether.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I want to thank you for putting this on the agenda. I've been contacted by many residents, and I believe maybe some of the ones that talked to me as well. So I'm happy that we're talking about it, and I want to give my opinion about the state of Bell Gardens in regards to parking and what are residents' options. As an example, I want to describe the way that residents see bumps as a sort of a huge accomplishment that they are required or asked to complete in order to get the bumps. Even though for us, it might be a simple process, sometimes for residents, it's a monumental sort of effort that requires them to get signatures and talk to their neighbors. And you know, it's like a long process for them. But I have seen some of our residents accomplish that, and they feel very proud about it, and they are happy that they can do it. So I know for a fact that our community needs a little bit of hand-holding when it comes to these processes, especially those processes that have never been done. We've never had a parking permit or a parking district implemented in the city of Bell Gardens, even though, as the mayor mentioned, we've had it for several years already. So I want to encourage staff, and I want to also support the mayor's sentiment of maybe doing a workshop or directing additional resources to maybe an outreach program, or making the process more friendly and approachable. If it requires us to train some of our staff to provide better customer service, maybe that's what's needed. But I do want to encourage us doing something in order to put these services that we've worked so hard to put on the table so that they can actually be utilized by our residents. Because unfortunately, our residents are at a disadvantage compared to other communities that are more, they're brought up with the culture of, I'm going to go to City Hall and get this done. And they know how to do it, maybe because their parents knew how to do it. But sometimes in our communities, we don't have that. So the more that we can help make those services accessible, the more I would encourage that, because I think we need it. That's all. Thank you.
And I think that parking is an ongoing issue, especially in our city, given the numbers that we just read as far as the square mile radius, how many cars and, people there are. I think that the fact that we do have all these options and we can inform our residents, I think a lot of residents aren't aware. I know that many have also approached me regarding the parking issue. And so if we could do those workshops or even, put it on our social media or send out even letters, because I know a lot of our older residents, they don't look at our social medias and they want to know what are some possible solutions to the parking issues. And so if we can get those things going, I would appreciate it as well.
And then Liz, what's our next biggest event or what's, an upcoming event for Parks and Recs? So maybe we can leaflet there prior to the workshop.
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, our major event coming up, the next one, unfortunately, is 4th of July. But in between then, we're starting a lot of our summer programs in June. So we'll have day camp and summer aquatic programming and our sports programming. So we're doing a lot right now that we can actually get the word out. We're also putting out our summer brochure. So that's a good, we're working on the final draft actually right now. So it's a good time. If we wanted to add information to the brochure, we could do that. But the biggest event coming up is our 4th of July event.
So City Manager, maybe you can look into.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely get a workshop put together prior to the 4th of July and just add some flavor as well to it. A lot of times the goal is to create more parking because that way nobody's displaced, nobody's put out. If somebody has a lot of cars, even if neighbors feel like they have too many cars, they don't really want to put them out. And unfortunately, T markings, as Veronica mentioned, they don't increase the number of parking spaces, they limit them. Residential parking permit limits parking spaces. Parking in front of your driveway, though, is pure parking space. We mentioned there's 1,000, and every time when we say there's a small number of those, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There's really nowhere else we have to increase 1,000 parking spaces. So we can do a workshop, but I think there's always a lot of opportunity there. And so we can get something put together prior to that. Probably we'll have a new public works director, and so we can probably get something put together by the end of May, early June.
Okay, and then we could just complement with Parks and Recs to promote that. And maybe social media, if we can do like a simplified social media post about these 1,000 spaces, just like if you live here, then you can get this, just a two-stepper.
Would we be able to add like a one-pager to the brochure so that information does go out to all residents? Would that be something that would be feasible to add to that?
Yes, we're able to do that. Yeah.
One last thing, Madam Mayor. And I know that we have a parking situation and that also sort of pushes some people to find or get creative with their parking. And a lot of them end up in our alleys, even though we have signage already. So I'd like to ask the help of the police department if we can maybe get some additional supervision of our alleys in particular. I've seen at least a few situations where the same cars are parked in a very dangerous area where if someone's turning into the alley, there's going to be a collision there. So if we can, maybe I can connect with you. I'll let you know what details I've noticed. But I think generally speaking, I've seen more cars parked in the alleys illegally, and I would appreciate some help there.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, Veronica. I'll go ahead and move to receive and file. May I have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena
Yes.
and Councilmember Chavez is excused. Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes, motion carries. City Manager, discussion item number 10.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This next item is a sidewalk vending compliance update that'll be provided by our Community Development Department. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gus Romo. Thank you, Mayor.
The City Council. This has been a sensitive topic for many reasons, as you've heard from our public. We have both the brick and mortar businesses as well as folks that support the sidewalk vendors But one thing to keep in mind is what we're trying to do is support everyone who is doing things with permits. In other words, we're reaching out to our sidewalk vendors while we're at the streets, identifying there is a roadway for you to come through and obtain your permits. But there seems to be a lot of confusion with food sidewalk vendors, thinking that they can go to the health department and get permits for their tables and their barbecues and so forth, but there's particular carts that are approved, and that's the difference, folks. Again, with the open flame out there, I just want to put that across because there is that confusion where sidewalk vendors that are having difficulty getting their health permits, it's because of the type of setup that they have. So again, there is a roadway that has been established and it's been made, I would say not necessarily easier, but a bit, it has been facilitated, I should say, with staff and the state to be able to get those carts approved. So I just wanted to put that out there before, just to avoid that confusion. So tonight we're asking you to receive and file this report, but we're also giving you an opportunity to give us direction, if desired, on added alternative regulations that are available to administer and enforce the sidewalk vending ordinance. So as we know, the background, back in 2018, Senate Bill 946 was approved, decriminalizing sidewalk vending, which became effective in 2019. City of Bell Gardens Council also approved ordinances to make sure that we had an ability to educate our public on how to get not only their health department permit, but also their business license. The purpose, of course, was to regulate all types of sidewalk vending. The issues that we've been having are not with general merchandise. In other words, we have permits for flower vendors, for fruit vendors, general merchandise. The issue has been with the hot food vendors, the ones that are cooking out on the sidewalks. And again, the reason we've been asked to enforce this a little more tightly is to protect the health and safety and welfare of our community. We're also looking at who is doing the sidewalk vending out there. And I'll tell you what we found is that it's not our residents. It's not businesses here in Bell Gardens. It's people coming from the outside setting up on our streets and vending. So that's one thing we found as we're investigating further. So again, keep in mind what we have to do is educate our vendors to get their health department permit. That's been our goal. We've put out a flyer, send it out on social media, also on our website and through the mail. The actual business license itself, it's a $70 fee. It's an annual fee. The cost, I think, that they're coming up with health department, those are the ones that are a little bit higher up, and we're talking about $300 to $400 process. And then we've been issuing notices of violation. We haven't been going directly to the administrative citation. But one issue that we've been having is that when we issue that notice of violation and we go back to that same spot, we find out that now it's a different vendor. And so one thing we're finding is that it's not a mom and pop vendor that's going out there to sell. People are getting hired to be there. So there's a business that's putting up these sidewalk vendors, and the next day they switch. So it's another staff member. And oftentimes they don't have an ID to provide. So we've only been able to issue one administrative citation because the vendors keep changing. It might be, again, the same business, but a different staff member at the location. So we've been finding, typical carts, tricycle carts, push carts, floor displays. All that you see here is not something that the health department would allow. So again, that's the biggest problem there. They have to have an actual manufactured cart. And what we're finding is that vendors are not coming in with those carts to the health department, the facility over in Baldwin Park where they get them approved. If they do that, more than likely they will get their permit and they'll be able to get their city business license as well. But this up here is not approvable by state law or by county health department or even by city business license. Since you've given us direction back in March to go forward and enforce, 17 notices of violation have been issued, 1 administrative citation. And again, I point that out too because it's very difficult to issue that citation to that vendor if they keep changing staff and if they don't provide an ID also. 22 educational flyers have been sent out. 54 of the permits that we see have been for, or I should say that the enforcement has been for food products. Sale of goods and other merchandise that's non-food related, 15 violations. Here's the brochure, or the flyer, I should say, that was sent out and also put on the city's website and social media. What this state is stating is that, hey folks, here's a reminder. Yes, sidewalk vending is permitted by the state of California. However, you have to get your permits. And here's the roadmap that you can get. Come see staff. We'll help you. We'll take you through the process. We'll hold your hand. We have no problem with that. Our code enforcement officers are being very polite. They're telling people, hey, here's a flyer. Come in. We'll tell you how to get it permitted. Next day, we go out again. We'll see if it's the same person out there. We'll issue another notice of violation. First one's a courtesy. And then after that, we'll start issuing 1, 2, 3 administrative citations. After that, we'll start getting the health department involved if needed. At this point, the city staff has not gotten the health department involved, but I'll tell you, residents and business owners have called, and we've been in communication with the health department because of that. So the health department is involved with or without the city staff. And here's what I was indicating to the permit fees, 393 to 772 is what the County of Health is charging. And they base it on an hourly that they have to go out there, on an average hourly for their inspectors. Bell Gardens, we're set at $72 renewal, 154 depending on the type of business and how many employees they have. So that's about as high as we go for their city business license. So again, this is to receive and file. Mayor and members of the City Council, we'd like to tell you that other cities have additional tools out there. We put it in the report. It's up to you whether you want us to follow encroachment permits. Keeping in mind too that we also get the fire department involved whenever we see an open flame and we see a danger there. So the fire department can come out there and shut them down. But as far as we're concerned, we're not following some of these other tools that other cities are using. We're still at a point where we're educating the public, doing a notice of violation, and having them do it on their own. But what we're finding is that once our code enforcement officers are gone, within an hour, we're getting called saying that the vendor is back. And typically this is happening after 7 o'clock at night and on the weekends. We do have a code enforcement officer that is dedicated to 1 week in a month right now. And it all depends on how much work there is. But again, we're trying our best to get the word out there, and our whole goal is that the vendors will come in and get that help from us. So far, we haven't seen it. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you guys for your very thorough presentation. I do want at this time to hear from my colleagues in terms of this issue. We heard from some businesses today that do have some worries. And I have also seen open flame and I had mentioned to the city manager directly under some of our city trees, which is something that's concerning and it seems to be expanding. So I want to see what other tools we have in order to help our businesses and also just to be fair to the community in general. Because I do feel like, we're growing in numbers in terms of how many street vendors we do have. We always try to help our communities and we always try to help everyone. But I think in this one, we need to recognize also who owns our our brick and mortar businesses. And it's the Latino community. It's people who, have their first business and we're also trying to help them as well. So I think that's important, something important to recognize in this very specific situation, who are the owners of our businesses here in the city.
So just to clarify and confirm, you said that the majority of the current street vendors are not Bell Gardens residents, correct?
That's what we're finding, yes.
And then as of right now, we're using code enforcement to go out. And how often are they going out?
every day during city business hours and once a month on the weekends, unless we ask them ahead of time to say, hey, we're going to need you this additional weekend. But even when they're out there on the weekends, we don't have them out there in the evening hours. So vendors are not supposed to go beyond 10 p.m. And at this point, we're finding that they are there from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m.
And aside from using our code enforcement officers, are we able to use our community service officers? Not necessarily our police department, because I don't want to go that route yet, but are we able to use our community service officers to assist code enforcement?
I'll defer that over to our city manager and our chief.
Yes, so Mayor Pro Tem, I think just in talking with legal counsel, the ordinance that's out there doesn't say that it has to be code enforcement that enforces that ordinance. It just says the city shall enforce the ordinance. So presumably any city staff, code enforcement is just very limited. Obviously, we have 2 code enforcement officers and a supervisor. They're doing building inspections, other things of that nature, and their ability to work every weekend, especially in the evening times, it's not a normal part of their routine, and we have to follow the employment MOUs and such. So we have talked about the possibility of engaging other employees to help out with that effort. So you could use employees such as the community service officers.
And I know, Gus, that you mentioned that even though the city themselves have not contacted the health department, many of our businesses have. So when do you feel that the health department will come out, or is that something that we have to initiate?
No, my understanding is that the health department has been out. And in the past, they've indicated due to safety concerns, they wanted a police officer to accompany them. That was a request they had made, but it doesn't mean that they will not go out there if that request is not given. I know other cities like El Monte, for example, they had gone through that and they had a health department coordinate with them and to go out there and cite several vendors. And they're the only ones who can really say, this cart has to be removed and the food has to be removed.
And Gus, can you just to kind of expound on that for the Mayor Pro Tem, for the rest of the council? I think the understanding that we have is there obviously in our ordinance, there's some limitations as it's written for us to be able to take anything from a vendor. We can tell them what we want to tell them all day long, issue them citations all day long. We can't physically take their food or their cart or their whatever other items they have with them. So
yes,
can you just talk about what is the health department even able to do beyond what the city's able to do? And are they even doing that?
Absolutely. We have our city attorney, Susie Altamirano, who's been helping us with it. I'm going to have her talk on that aspect.
Thank you, Gus. So 2 points of clarification. The county health department will not come out unless accompanied by either sheriff department or police department. They made that clear. The second part is confiscation is by the county. So as an update from the Senate bill, city cannot confiscate food or equipment. There could be some other considerations if it's a fire violation or some other code enforcement, but as far as the sidewalk vending ordinance, no confiscation, only administrative fines.
Have we explored shifting our code enforcement staff schedule to better accommodate the needs of the community, considering that we are seeing a rise in after hours and weekend street vendors?
We have one code enforcement officer was hired with that specific schedule, the flexibility to be needed on the weekends if that accommodated what we were needing to do. However, in talking to our building services supervisor and our code enforcement staff, they believe that doing that every weekend is really not going to have the effect unless we can have county health department come in and help us remove them. Because what's going to happen is we issue the notice of violation, then we issue administrative citations. They can pay those. And if they're making good money, they're going to continue to pay them. So the fact that we cannot remove them from there, all they're going to be doing is saying, well, it's just the cost of doing business, and they'll keep paying the citation. So at some point, we need the health department to come in.
But if we have coverage on the weekend and we are able to share that data with the county,
yes,
do you think their enforcement would improve rather than saying we stipulate that this would be the case and therefore we're not staffing to do it?
I think it is possible that if we put enough administrative citations out there and have enough officers, code enforcement officers there on the weekends and after hours, that the businesses may end up saying, you know what, this isn't worth it, I'll go elsewhere. So they might get to that point. But if they feel that there's consistency, because that's the key right there. The unpermitted businesses need to see that there's a consistent effort to enforce. If they feel that, no, the city's not going to enforce after hours, or they're not going to coordinate with the health department, they're going to continue to be at that location.
So shouldn't our efforts be in providing consistency then?
Yes, correct.
So I think, Councilmember, I think what, just to kind of summarize the conversation is, we've talked about having code enforcement out there in the evenings. There are some issues that Gus isn't even bringing up that I think the employees would probably bring up, which is just safety concerns. The situations that they get put in. Obviously, if they're threatened, they should call 911 or call the police department directly if they can. But I think what we're acknowledging is that we can. I think it's interesting that Gus even mentions they'll just pay the administrative citation. I'm not sure that they would. I'm not sure it would even get paid, but I think there is value in the effort, though, to putting more code enforcement time on the weekends, even if it may not yield direct results, if they're even indirect results where, there are some vendors, maybe if they're just barely hanging on from a profitability perspective, that enough attention with administrative citations or some concern that they may be required to pay something wouldn't hurt. It would help, I think. I think the issue has just been from a staffing perspective, and to be fair, even just in following our labor MOUs. So these positions, the way that they're hired and the way the jobs are generally, this is going into some of the detail on the HR side of things, but the way that the positions were hired, it takes a lot for us to be able to change a schedule on a basis that may even be temporarily. It looks temporary to us, but it's not temporary to the employee group. So we've had challenges there in making sure that we're compliant. That's why we've been doing the once a month weekend enforcement more in the evenings, and kind of balancing that against the success that has. So I think the short answer is we can go back and look to see for additional opportunities to get more staffing out there on the weekends, because I think obviously that helps in this situation. It will probably be some incremental improvement, but we can go back and do that as well.
And before SB 946, City Manager, I know we've discussed this. The community services officers were helping enforce. However, at that time, the carts were able to be confiscated. And since the passage of SB 946, again, that's no longer the case. And that's one reason we had that amendment last time, to make sure that that wasn't a tool that we used. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I think this council is not intending to be punitive. I think we're trying to be fair, and just to have some compliance with our street vendors. But as Maria or Councilwoman Pulido mentioned, maybe we can reinforce our efforts with regards to our code enforcement. Maybe not in the long term, so that we don't overtire them or burn them out, but maybe in the short term to have continuous enforcement over the weekends and maybe later hours. Maybe we have a concerted effort in the banning that might help ease and the tension a little bit.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to comment on the issue and draw some analogies from the comment of the public. I know that there was a concerned resident voicing their discomfort with a tamales factory right next door. I know that there's varying degrees of severity when it comes to street vending and how invasive it may be or not be, but I am specifically concerned about that resident because I have experienced a lot of noise and maybe disturbances, either personally or from people in my family that have reported it to me, also community members. So I'd like to encourage maybe looking at having an additional code enforcement officer and maybe working that into our budget. I feel like I keep seeing the need to have someone that is capable of having a schedule that's more flexible so that we can use them on the weekends and nighttime. I do feel that there is a need in the community. I think a lot of community members, they have these quality of life issues and they just give up. They give up trying to get help because they don't receive the help. And maybe if we had another officer, we will be able to provide that assistance. So just an idea, I'm going to put it out there. I know that we're going to have the budget coming up soon, so maybe something to think about. I definitely see the need to invest a little bit more in our code enforcement and community development department. So that's my comment. Thank you.
If I may, just what your point is well taken, sir. Well, there is something that is coming up that is of concern. What the gentleman had talked about, this tamale factory, that's not just a isolated incident. We've been hearing from other cities that there are locations, industrial locations, where the food preparation is taking place. And again, there's no health department permits. So the businesses that are hiring people on an hourly basis to go out there and be the front line for their vending cart are preparing this food in unpermitted facilities. And people can get a permit at their own house as a cottage industry. But again, they have to have a health department approval. They can cook from their house, but there's certain rules that they have to follow. But because of that, we're finding that these businesses locating within warehouses and so forth are definitely a concern. It's something that a additional code enforcement officer can help investigate. Thank you.
Thank you for providing that. I am honestly concerned about quality of life issues for residents that have to get up to go to work at 4 a.m. and they can't go to sleep by midnight. So I take these issues very serious and I fought for these issues in the past. So I appreciate that someone in the city is providing their expertise to recognize that there are problems out there in our community. So hopefully we can invest in that. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? So then we'll move forward with hopefully additional enforcement. If not, then we'll bring the item back for further discussion. Does that sound like an option? Yes. Okay. I'll go ahead and motion to receive and file. May I have a second?
Second?
Roll call vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barcena?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez is excused. Councilwoman Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
And Mayor Cortez.
Yes, motion carries. City manager discussion item number 11.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. This item's an update on city's rent stabilization, tenant eviction protections ordinance. Originally, I believe the request was related slightly more specifically to mobile home and protections that exist for mobile home residents. So we've included that in the presentation, but also use the opportunity to provide more broad information as well regarding the whole gamut of rent stabilization and tenant eviction protection. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Gus Romar, Community Development Director. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor, members of the City Council. So again, an update as well, this time on our rent stabilization and tenant eviction protection ordinance, which went into effect on October 12th of 2022. So we're into it about 6 months now. And I wanted to give you an update on what's been happening. And first of all, I want to thank our housing specialist, Veronica Jaramillo, who's with us tonight too. She has been doing an excellent job in terms of coordinating the efforts of taking in applications, contesting rent increases, communicating with the public, and also applications from our landlords for fair market rent increases. Now, I know in the last meeting, I was off and I had heard that there were some concerns through the public. I did go through and I heard those concerns. And I wanted to address to you some of the things that we've been doing as staff. Keep in mind that for 3 years now, we're going into our 3rd year of being able to get the permanent local housing allocation funds from the state through the county, through LACTA. And these funds, if you recall, half of them you approved for free legal eviction defense. So in year one, we were able to notify our residents and our public out there that, hey, we have funds for you. If you get an eviction notice, come in, we'll put you in contact with Stay Housed LA, and you'll get free legal service to help you fight that eviction, or at least get things down the path where you can get up to date. So that is available. Unfortunately, the state indicated that that was no longer going to be able to be used for that. So year 2 and year 3, we have to reallocate it for something else. We're going to be coming back to you to try to do another rental assistance program. We think that would be an excellent use of that money. That's something that we're going to recommend to you. But again, that'll be at a future date. So going back to background on Ordinance 927, which we call the R-Step, the Rent Stabilization and Tenant Eviction Protections Ordinance. There's 2 chapters that came into play when you adopted this ordinance. One specifically for rent stabilization, and keep in mind, it's not rent control. A lot of people confuse this with rent control. Control means, hey, there is no increase at all. Stabilization means you want it to be fair. And what the council said is fairness means whatever 50% of the CPI is. So CPI this last year was very high. You based it on no more than 4% maximum. So CPI at the time, if you recall, was close to 9%. So the maximum would have been 4% regardless. If CPI was 8%, it was still 4% max. CPI gets down, let's say to 6%, then it would be 3%. So it would go down. If there is no increase in the consumer price index, then it would be 0 increase for that year. However, we've also given the landlords the ability to come up to fair market rent. So there's something called 80% of the small market rents. It's based on the nation as a whole. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they've got an average of what a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom would cost. And we're telling the landlords, based on this ordinance, if you're at below 80% of whatever that market rent is, you can come in and apply for an additional 3%. And I think that's what's caused some of the issues that you've been hearing, where people are saying, wow, they're charging me over 4%. Well, if they get approval based on their rents being below market, they can go up to 7% total. And again, that'll be adjusted this year again with the CPI. It happens every April. So by the time October comes up again, we're going to be looking at adjusting that CPI. Also, there's been discussion about the no-cause eviction protections. Yes, we do believe that there's some landlords out there that want to evict their tenants with no cause. They have to have an agreement, a voluntary agreement from that tenant. So the tenant doesn't have to agree if there's no cause. But then again, there are some areas where they have to get complete relocation costs, and it's up to 3 months of that rent. So those are some of the protections, again, that are in play. And also to note that mobile home parks are included. Now, the reason there might have been some confusion about this is because single-family homes, condominiums, and in other words, anything with has a title on it where you own the property as a single-family home. I forget the term exactly that they use. Norma is here, I believe, on the thing. But anyways, we'll go back to that if needed. But those are exempt. So a single-family home does not have to abide by rent stabilization by that 4%. Mobile homes do. So even though mobile home is a single unit and a single space, they do have to abide by rent control. So if you have a mobile home unit, you decide you want to rent that unit out instead of living in it, you still have to abide by the city's rent stabilization ordinance. The space rent too, that has to be limited to the 4% right now, or whatever it is going to be in the future. So want to point that out because there are some folks that were concerned that mobile homes were not covered, but they are.
And Gus, just to clarify, because since you mentioned April's coming up, so to clarify, for that calculation that Gus just showed there on the, could you go back one slide, Gus?
Yes.
It's important because it's coming up. Property owners should be looking at this. I think current tenants should be looking at this. So it's 50% of CPI up to 4%. So last April, we looked at the CPI in April of 2022 and looked to see how much had it changed since the previous 12 months. And it was up 7.9%. So you take half of that and it's 3.85, which is less than 4. And that's the number. Just a quick check of CPI up through March of this year. It's significantly lower. It's at it's exactly 3.7%. So presumably the April CPI amount that we will be looking at for 2023 will probably be around 4%. So if you were to take half of that, it's 2%. That would be the new number that we would be pegging off of starting in October.
That's
Rents
correct,
could
sir,
increase
yes.
by 2% since it's under 4. So there'll be a reduction in that percentage coming up. That I don't think the CPI number is going to change significantly from now until April. So April is important. That's the date you look to see what the number is, and then you implement that number effective October.
That is correct, sir. Yes. And also keeping in mind the small market rents, that the HUD numbers for the 80% market rate, that is also going to be changing come November 1st. Yes. For the small market rents, yes, that's our understanding. And all of that is going to be coming out in a flyer that is currently being worked on. And, my apologies for this flyer not having gone out yet. There's been a lot of changes back and forth. And our Parks and Rec department is also helping us with it. We want to make sure that it's a comprehensive flyer that we can also use for our website, for our summer brochure through Parks and Rec that's coming up. It's going to be in there. It'll talk about these changes as well as the applicability of the ordinance. And it'll also have a QR code. So anybody with a cell phone can tag it and be able to see the ordinance immediately. But of course, we know that there's people out there that are not computer savvy and may not want things online. They want it physical. So we're also going to be mailing out this link, and people can come in and we can help them at the counter, either with a hard copy or to be able to access it on the city's computers. Yeah. The other thing we want to point out is we have, well, maybe I should just go through this workshop first. I mean, through the presentation. But we have
I'm sorry,
workshops coming up.
Gus, can I
Twice a
interrupt?
month.
Gus, can I interrupt real quick?
Oh,
And
yes,
just-
Norma, please
yeah.
do.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple things on the prior slide that I heard. With regard to the small area rents, I think you said it was nationwide, and HUD does do something nationally, but I just want to be clear for the public that the numbers we use are specific to the Bell Garden zip code. So it's very narrow. So the comparable numbers are specific to Bell Garden. So that's one thing I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. The other is regard to this idea of voluntary agreements and relocation costs. The relocation costs are triggered if it's a no-fault eviction. But voluntary agreements are slightly different. Those are buyout agreements, and there's a provision in the ordinance that addresses buyout agreements. And in those cases, it's essentially a contract between the tenant and the landlord where they agree that they will move out, and that's a negotiated agreement that's not tied to the specific relocation benefits that are required under the no-fault eviction provision. So those are two separate things. So I just want to make sure that those two things don't get conflated.
Thank you so much for that, Norma. Very much appreciated. So, in listening to what Norma has to say, that's one reason we tell residents we do not give legal advice. They can come in, they get a copy of the ordinance, and they can provide it to either LAFLA, or we can have them talk with us when we're having a consultation with our city attorney. When we have those standing workshops, we're going to make sure that we have any legal questions turned over to our city attorney. So again, we present the ordinance, we outline where the sections are at, and then they can take it to legal service to get interpreted. But again, we're going to help as much as we can without staff providing any legal advice. So since the ordinance was adopted or went into effect, There's been 30 applications contesting rent increases. And 30 applications for also fair market rent increases, that additional 3% we were talking about. 175 total units have been registered. And we're going to continue getting those units. Now, keep in mind, even though single-family units, condominiums are exempt from the rent stabilization ordinance, doesn't mean that they don't register. If somebody is renting out their single-family home, they still have to register and pay the registration fee. There's been over 90 consultations with the residents to understand their rights. And again, this is the hand-holding that we want to do with the residents when they come in. Over 50 referrals to State's House LA for free legal eviction defense. And I've understood at least 3 of them that were successful. They came in to thank us because they were kept from being evicted. 2 public workshops were done to educate tenants and landlords, and that was early on in the process. And now we're going to start the standing workshops. We have a full-time staff member, again, with Veronica Jaramillo. We also have a part-time office assistant, a lady named Rosario Quirarte, that's helping Veronica with all the processing. The other thing is we have the cost study that's going forward now. You approved a professional services agreement, and the consultant named RCS is moving forward with that cost study. Before we can identify what the costs are going to be for the future, do we need more staffing? Are you going to want a rent control board? What are the registry fees going to look like? Before we can start collecting those fees, that cost study has to be done. So we're anticipating that before, let's say, end of September, that's the target date, we're going to have a cost study before you for consideration. So again, that's on April 10th. You gave us that direction with approval of the professional services agreement. And this is the slide that identifies the standing hybrid workshops. So they'll be virtual and they'll also be in person. 3rd Tuesday and Wednesday of each month, beginning on May 16th. One will be specifically targeted for tenants, the other one for property owners. Not to say that they can't attend either one, but we want to make sure we focus on tenant questions with one and on property owner questions or concerns on the other. And location will be here at City Hall, 2nd floor, the EOC. And so this is where I was talking about that flyer. We're going to have that hopefully out this week. We're going to make sure that it gets reviewed by our city manager. And we have everything we need on there that'll identify the ordinance, when it was approved, the protections that are in place, identifying that mobile homes are included, and then the standing workshops information, and then with the links and also the QR code. For contact, we have our housing specialist, Veronica Jaramillo, on email and on phone call, and also the city's website, both in English and Spanish. So everything is in Spanish as well. And that concludes my presentation, folks. If you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. This was a very comprehensive overview, but I do want us to focus on the mobile parks. I know it was on one of the slides, but if we could just go back to it briefly, because I think that's why we added this item back on the agenda specific to our mobile park homes. And I just want to clarify for those that are listening to us online that mobile park homes are included within our ordinance, and our ordinance currently protects them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we do not need an additional ordinance. What we have right now will cover them. And also, I know you mentioned in part of the concerted efforts that we're doing that we're going to be sending out letters to the homes. I do want to specify that those letters are going to the mobile park homes, very specifically to every single unit, so that every single resident that lives in a mobile park or a mobile unit knows that they are also covered within our ordinance. So we are doing a concerted separate effort, very specific to our mobile parks. So that they know. We estimated last time that there was maybe about 400 units around there.
That sounds about right.
So we thought it was effective for us to mail out to every single resident as opposed to the owners or landowners, so that they're aware of these rights. We're also going to be putting social media campaign out, but our focus for this one is primarily so we can inform our mobile parks that they're also covered under our ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. And in fact, when those flyers go out, you're correct. They're going to go to each mobile home space, but also not just to the property owners, to the tenants. So of apartment units, it's going to be how many units you have there. It'll be titled resident. So each one will receive that. I would like perhaps our city attorney, Norma Tavares, to be able to comment a bit on why we didn't do a separate mobile home ordinance. We included this to protect mobile home owners, but we didn't see the need to do a whole separate ordinance. Norma, are you there?
Hi, yeah, so this was the point of discussion early on when the rent stabilization eviction protection ordinance was passed. And we did go back and forth with LAFLA on this issue. LA County, as you recall, was the model that we used the template that was used by the city of Bell Gardens to draft our local ordinance. And LA County has a separate mobile home park ordinance. And part of the rationale is that there's the mobile home park state residency law that has some idiosyncrasies that are specific to mobile home parks. And so at the time, the agreement was that we would incorporate mobile home park protections into our own ordinance and essentially defer the idea of having a separate standalone mobile home park ordinance at a later date once the city had an opportunity to implement its ordinance and identify whether there would be a need for a future standalone mobile home park ordinance. But as a general protections cover mobile home parks, but that doesn't mean that the city, can't at a future date decide to have a standalone ordinance.
Thank you so much, Norma. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question. So I just wanted to follow up with a question again about the mobile homes. I know that we specified that the 4% cap with the 50% CPI applies to the mobile home. So that's obviously a relief for our residents. But my question is more specific in regards to the entire ordinance. Are there certain areas that do not apply to mobile homes that we need to be aware of, or does this mean that the entire ordinance is transferable to a mobile home resident?
The entire ordinance applies to mobile home residents. Sir.
Thank you.
Norma, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there anything specific in the ordinance that does not talk about or apply to a mobile home owner?
The mobile home owners are generally, mobile home parks and spaces are covered under our definition of rental unit. So it's very broad. What we at the staff level have had to do is make an interpretation on whether mobile home park spaces are eligible for the additional 3% increase adjustment that was described earlier with regard to fair market rents. And the reason for that, and so what we staff determined is that the additional fair market rate increase does not apply to mobile home park spaces. And so that's the one area that we have determined that there's not applicability for that additional 3%. And the rationale is that there is no equivalent for comparable rents in the way that we have the HUD small area rent equivalent. And therefore that additional 3% that's available to the mobile home park units is not available to the underlying space.
So that would be the only item. Thank you, Norma.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you so much, guys. I'll go ahead and motion to receive and file. May I have a second? Second by Councilmember Barcena, roll call vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Barcena
Yes.
and Councilmember Chavez is excused. Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes, motion carries. The last item is City Council Successor Agency Member Comments. We'll begin with Councilmember Barcena.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank staff for putting together a wonderful event for Earth Day. I want to encourage everyone to continue promoting our events. I wish I would have seen more people, but I can honestly say that was one of the best Earth Day events that I've seen in the city of Bell Gardens. So I want to thank staff for being out there. Even the Public Works Department was out there with the booth, and everyone was doing a great job. I'm very proud of my city, and I want to make sure that residents get to see it as much as possible. So any type of creativity that can go into promoting our events. I know that you guys are already doing a great job. I know that our team that promotes these events online is already doing a great job. But let's find ways to boost it up a little bit more, because we have so many great things to offer our community from what I've seen, that I want to make sure we get as much exposure as possible. Another thing is that was already answered. So that's my comment for tonight. I won't take more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Pulido?
Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. And I agree with Councilmember Barcena. The event was a lot of fun. Even though our new tree is not an actual strawberry tree, it's exciting to have a new species in our park. So thank you so much for that.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Thank you so much to all the staff for putting on wonderful events for our community. Thank you to staff today for all the information provided. I think that if we get this information out to our residents regarding the mobile homes being involved already in the rent ordinance, and also the different parking options that we have, it's going to just educate our residents to help find other solutions. So thank you.
Thank you. As far as my comments along the same lines, I think these presentations were very enlightening in terms of everything that we've done and we continue to do in our city. Just all the applications and submissions, and the fact that our residents are reaching out with regards to this rent control ordinance, that's big. It's going to take some time, obviously, to perfect it. But I think we're making great strides and great progress in, version of equity in this community. So I just want to thank every single department for all the amazing work that is done. And, two departments that go unnoticed is our city attorneys and also our city manager. They do a lot to keep our city running, especially our city manager. So thank you, Mike, for all the work that you do for our community and making sure that we have great directors, because without you, the city wouldn't function. So just want to highlight you. In our city attorney's office, also thank you for all your advice and keeping our city moving in a very legal and safe way. So that's always appreciated, and good work, colleagues. With that, I'm going to